The Cough by the Stove, 1937 to 1940. Kharkov, December 1937. In the design bureau of the Comintern Locomotive Factory No. 183, the stove roared, yet the air was ice-cold. The tea glass on the table had frozen solid. At the head of the table sat a man whose face was white as paper, Mikhail Ilyich Koshkin. Tuberculosis was eating him alive, but his eyes burned. "I'll say it again," he said between coughs. "Sloped armor, diesel engine, wide tracks as wide as possible. There is no other way. Either this tank exists, or we all die." The young engineer beside him, Alexander Morozov, blew on his tea and muttered, "Mikhail Ilyich, Stalin loves the old BT tanks. They'll send us to Siberia." Koshkin looked up. "Then we'll build it in Siberia. But we will build it." For 3 years they never slept. A-20, A-32. Finally 2 prototypes were ready. The T-34 model 1940. In March 1940, with snow still knee-deep, Koshkin made a mad decision: "We'll drive the tanks to Moscow ourselves." 2 tanks, 2 crews, 1,000 kilometers of winter roads. Engines froze, tracks snapped, they repaired them on the way. Koshkin caught pneumonia. When the tanks stopped in front of the Kremlin, Stalin came out, looked in silence for a long time, then nodded. The project was approved. 6 months later, on September 26, 1940, Koshkin died. He was 42. His last words were, "My tank will live." It lived. 2. The first shock, June 22, 1941. Lithuanian border, 4:15 a.m. The German 7th Panzer Division surges forward. Suddenly, tanks they have never seen before appear. Long-barreled, sloped-armored, diesel-smelling monsters. The first 37 mm pack round hits the hull. Tink. Only paint flakes off. Second round, third round, same result. The German gunner screams into the radio, "The Russians have new tanks. They cannot be penetrated." That day the Red Army had only 967 T-34s. But those 967 tanks turned the entire Wehrmacht plan upside down. Guderian wrote in his diary, "From the moment we met the T-34, we lost our superiority." 3. Women who carried a factory on their backs, October 1941 to March 1942. Kharkov was about to fall. On the night of October 13th, the factory sirens wailed for the last time. 70,000 workers, machines, dies, half-finished hulls. Everything was loaded onto trains. A 2,000 kilometers journey. People froze to death in some wagons. When they reached Nizhny Tagil, the snow was 1.5 meters deep. There was no factory, just an empty, snowy plain. They built the first tank there, in the open air. At -42 degrees Celsius welding was impossible. They riveted. The armor plates received no heat treatment, no paint, no radios. Some tanks had no turrets at all. Yet in December 1941, the first Ural-built T-34s reached the Moscow front. The Germans were still asking, "Where are these tanks coming from?" A woman worker, Maria Oktyabrskaya, had lost her husband in the war. She worked day and night, saved every kopeck, donated it all and paid for her own tank. She named it Fighting Girlfriend. Then she volunteered, went to the front with that very tank, and in 1944 rammed a tiger at point-blank range and died. Her tank still stands in the Kubinka Museum. 4. 4 People in Hell, 1942 to 1943. The inside of a T-34 was hell. 4 men in 42 liters of space. Plus 60 degrees Celsius in summer, minus 30 degrees Celsius in winter. The commander aimed, loaded, and gave orders at the same time. No radio, they signaled with flags. The engine was so loud ears bled. But from the outside they were unstoppable. In Stalingrad, on the banks of the Volga, 1 T-34 regiment fought for 48 hours in the same tanks. When ammunition ran out, they took it from German corpses. When fuel ran out, they siphoned it from abandoned German trucks. At the end of 48 hours, 5 men were alive, 37 tanks were gone, but Paulus's 6th Army was encircled. 5. The burning summer of Kursk, 5 to 12 July 1943. The largest tank battle in history. 6,000 tanks, 2 million soldiers, 4,000 aircraft. The Germans boasted of their new Tigers and Panthers. This time we will definitely crush the Red Army. On the first day at Prokhorovka, 800 tanks clashed. Dust blocked the sun. After hours of fighting, the Germans had lost 400 tanks, the Soviets 500. But the Soviets had another 500 tanks on the way. The Germans had none. One T-34/76 crew, Lieutenant Pavel Skripnikov's tank, hit a Tiger in the side armor from 800 meters. The Tiger burst into flames. Skripnikov sent a single radio message, "I have avenged my father." 6. The 85 mm Rage, 1944 to 1945. In 1944, the T-34-85 appeared. Bigger turret, 85 mm gun. It could now kill Tigers and Panthers from 1,000 meters. Combined with the Red Army's deep battle doctrine, tank regiments advanced 100 to 150 kilometers in a single leap. The Germans could no longer stop the Russian tank flood. April 1945. The streets of Berlin. T-34s roll toward the Reichstag. On one tank someone had chalked, "From Kharkov to Berlin, 2,200 kilometers. Fuel, German petrol. Ammunition, German shells. Invoice, you owe us." 7. The last track mark, May 9, 1945. 0:43 a.m. In front of the Reichstag, the last Tiger explodes in flames. The commander of the T-34 beside it climbs out of the hatch, sits on the track, lights a cigarette. He silently salutes with a flag in his hand. An old man approaches from behind. In his hand is an old photograph of Koshkin. He leans against the warm armor and begins to cry quietly. The tank's engine is still hot. Beneath it are the marks of tracks that have turned without stopping for 5 years. Those marks were the marks of freedom. 84,070 T-34s were built in total. They saved the lives of 35 million people. They kept a nation standing. And they carved one designer's name into history in letters of steel. Mikhail Ilyich Koshkin. 5 years after his death, his tank was taking its victory lap in Berlin. That is why, whenever people speak of tanks, they still say in a low voice, "It wasn't just steel. It was a nation's heart. And that heart is still beating."